Students ask me all the time about tone and how to achieve it. However, this shows quite a misunderstanding of what tone actually is. Whatever stage you're at on the harmonica, you are already achieving tone. The question is it good tone or not? I sat down with my good pal Liam Ward from learntheharmonica.com to talk about all things tone, and we actually started by defining it and then talking about the different types of tone that you can get. Before I show you that conversation, you can give me a thumbs up by hitting the like button below, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And basically Liam and I are just going to discuss tone for half an hour or so. So Liam, I think it's probably a good idea that we define what tone is before we go any further. How would you define tone?
Ooh, good question. So I think we're talking about quite a specific thing when we talk about tone in the context of harmonica. So tone can mean various things, but really, I think in the context we're looking at, you're talking about the basic sound of the notes that you play, how they are shaped, what character they have when you play any note on the harmonica. So whether it's thin, fat, big, small, warm, or cold, dark, light, that sort of thing.
Nice. I think that's a very succinct way of putting it, and I'm glad that we haven't qualified it yet, because I get questions all the time from students. I'm sure you do as well. It's like, Tomlin, I need to know about tone, and really, I know what they're asking. They're asking about good tone, but they don't really know how to formulate that question, and what is good tone. So I guess something to start with before we go down the rabbit hole of tone and this discussion is what is good tone? Is there one definition that you can give good tone, or are there many different good tones?
Yeah, I have the same thing as you, that people get in touch and they haven't asked exactly what they really want to know, but you can guess from the amount of inquiries you've had on that topic. And often it comes down to wanting fat tone, or a big or a fat tone. That seems to be the preference a lot of the time. And I'm actually really excited we're doing this episode, not just because I can imagine that I'm on Shag, Married, Annoyed, and that we're married and we've got a kid on the way, which is obviously my secret dream. Sorry to my wife who might be listening, but no, I was really excited to talk about tone, because I can see an opportunity to fill in some of the gaps when it comes to tone, because fat tone is an amazing thing, but I kind of think a lot of the time we get a bit obsessed with that and leave out some other things that could also be classed as good tone. I mean, you're probably going to say, no, that's a load of rubbish now. What do you reckon?
Well, no, I'm really glad that you took the bait, because it is always the place where people go to is they want the biggest, bassiest, meatiest tone. And I think that always sounds great in your bedroom. But in the context of playing with a band, it's a good sound, but it's definitely not the only good tone that you should have in your repertoire. And I think quite often a thinner, brighter tone is actually more useful in a band context when you're trying to be the soloist who cuts through. And sometimes if you kind of sacrifice everything to the temple of at the temple of fat tone, then you can kind of disappear in the mix. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word I would pick out from what you just said is context. I think context is everything. So that might be the setting, the genre, or it could just be what you're trying to say where you are in a solo or where you are in a song, and what you've been doing so far and what you might want to use to contrast with that. So you don't have to play, and I don't think you should play with the same tone the whole way through a song. Now, lots of blues players, and especially amplified blues players, and I think maybe we should talk a bit about gear later on as well, because there's kind of a side to it with that. But amplified blues players, a lot of the time it's about getting that big fat tone and maintaining it. And that's such a great skill to have and a great sound to create. But if you listen to the great players, they're often playing with that tone. They don't just establish that tone and keep the exact same tone the whole way through, because at the end of the day, they're telling a story. So at different points in that story, they want to use different characters to represent different emotions. And all the best storytellers do that, and the best harmonic players do that.
Oh, no doubt. I remember vividly when we did a workshop together a couple of years ago, and Will Wilde was there. And Will has kind of monster sounds on stage. He's all about the big, heavy harmonica sound. Not necessarily that kind of classic fat tone, but he definitely has a very big sound. And halfway through the song, he leapt off stage very athletically and put his microphone to one side and just played acoustically in the room. And it was so much thinner and quieter than anything he'd done before, but it was so powerful. Everyone stopped talking. Everyone was drawn into what he was playing. And then, he gradually came back to the stage, brought the microphone back into things, cupped it, and got that big sound again. And that kind of dynamic shift between the two was so powerful. So I think that's one of the most kind of eye-opening moments for me in terms of seeing live harmonica and really thinking about the differences of tone throughout a performance. I guess I want to know what your favorite harmonica tones, like what are the recordings that really get you excited about harmonica as an instrument, but not from Chop's point of view, tones.
I love songs where there's that contrast that I mentioned involved. So Easy by Big Walter's a good example, because he starts very gentle and then he goes really dirty. And part of that is the licks, and part of it is the note selection, but it's also just choosing where to be gentle and choosing where to really get gritty and dig in. And it's not just to do with volume, although that's part of it. It's also choosing what to do with your mouth. What are you choosing to do to create a variety of sounds? So I think Big Walter is a great example, because in many ways of the classic guys, he's the perfect example of big tone. Mm-hmm. And especially his biggest followers are obsessed with tone and big fat tone.
The conversation didn't end there. There is loads more. And if you want to watch the rest of our conversation, just head over to my new Harmonica podcast channel by clicking the link below. All right, thanks for watching. Happy harping.